Now that brings us to August. Going into August, what are general expectations for Bitcoin? Well, the average return in August for Bitcoin over all of its history is actually negative 0.6%. But again, there's a huge variance on this. It is at least notable, though, to say that out of all of history, the only 2 months that are on average red are August and September being very much more red than August on average. On average, in September, we see about a 7% decline. And you can see, in fact, the last 6 Septembers for Bitcoin have in fact been red. For August, in the pre-halving year of 2019, we saw a 4.5% drop. In 2015, we saw a 19% drop. And in 2011...
Not much has happened to Bitcoin in the past few days, but that doesn't mean Bitcoin will be able to hold the pressure or even start going up again. In fact, you're about to see shocking numbers showing you that August may be a horrible month for your returns. When Gareth looked at Bitcoin today, he just said this.
Okay, let's go to the Bitcoin chart here. All right, so is Bitcoin rallying today? Nah. Bitcoin not really doing much. You know, it's so weird to go from the most volatile market being crypto to a market that is almost not moving. Now, is it lulling people into a false sense of this market is dead? Yes, that's usually what markets do. At some point, this will wake up. I don't know where it will be. Will it pull back to the 27 and change level? Will it go down to the lows? Will it just start to break up? That's what we have to wait and see. But I'm not even going to spend a lot of time on crypto, guys, because frankly, there's not a whole lot to say. There just isn't.
But there's a lot to say. Benjamin Cowan just did a brutal analysis of Bitcoin's history in the pre-halving years, and these numbers may shock you. Look how brutal Ben's predictions are using past data and his tables.
We have discussed the thesis many times before this year that in the pre-halving years, we spend approximately half the year going up and half the year going down. And generally what that has looked like in 2011 and 2019 was 5 of the first 6 months were green, and then 5 of the last 6 months were red. For 2015, it was slightly different when 4 of the first 6 months were red, and then we ended up having 5 of the last 6 months be green. But what's interesting in that situation is we still had about 7 green and 5 red months. So in all prior pre-halving years, we saw 6 green, 6 red, plus or minus 1, because in 2019 and 2011, it was 6 and 6. Today, the current count sits at 5 green and 2 red. Going into the month of July, I said that the average return for Bitcoin in July of the pre-halving year is negative 4.74%. The number that actually came out in July was negative 4.09%. So in this case, it's an example where the most likely outcome, or let's just say the average outcome, maybe not the most likely, but the average outcome based on the historical record in pre-halving years ended up more or less being what we saw in July. Which is interesting because, of course, if you look at many Julys over the course of Bitcoin's history, the average return is 9% plus or minus 16%. Pretty large deviation there, large variance, of course. But when you break it down by the pre-halving year, you can see that it gives you a slightly different result. And if you take a look at 2019, it was about negative 7.5%. 2015 was about 8% in July. And 2011 was about negative 15%.
And this is what's expected for the rest of the month.
Now that brings us to August. Going into August, what are general expectations for Bitcoin? Well, the average return in August for Bitcoin over all of its history is actually negative 0.6%. But again, there's a huge variance on this. It is at least notable, though, to say that out of all of history, the only 2 months that are on average red are August and September being very much more red than August on average. On average, in September, we see about a 7% decline. And you can see, in fact, the last 6 Septembers for Bitcoin have in fact been red. For August, in the pre-halving year of 2019, we saw a 4.5% drop. In 2015, we saw a 19% drop, and in 2011, we saw about a 40% drop. If you average out the historical pre-halving year months of August, you will see that the average return on Bitcoin in August of the pre-halving year is approximately negative 21%. Be that as it may, 2011, we must note, has a pretty large drawdown. And so you could exclude that and only look at 2015 and 2019. When you do that, though, you still come up with a negative number, right? If you were to take negative 19% and negative 7.5%, negative 8%, you're still looking more or less at an average return in August of somewhere around 11, 12%, something like that. In every pre-halving year, August has in fact been red for Bitcoin. But I would again go as far to say that the reason for this correction is not crypto specific. I think there's elements of it. I think that Bitcoin dropping below the 20-week SMA around Q3 of the pre-halving year, what it accomplishes is it washes out the remaining altcoin projects that are not going to provide any utility, or they have no great purpose being here. It washes a lot of those out, not all of them. There's always a few that kind of stick around, but it washes out quite a few of them. Furthermore, one of the reasons we see this correction by Bitcoin around this time is, of course, because of seasonality in the stock market.
So according to the expectations based on the previous years, this was what happened, and what Ben is also predicting.
The monthly returns table so that you can see that July more or less came in at expectations. For August, the average is negative 21% to the downside in pre-halving years. If you exclude 2011, it's more like negative 11 or negative 12%, something like that. For the record, just so we can go test this out, a 10% drop in August, if we actually go get the sort of the monthly where we started off the month here, a 10% drop would put Bitcoin back about $26,000, which I mean is not that far much. It's not really that unheard of. We were at 26K just a few weeks ago, or a few weeks ago. It wouldn't really be that drastic. You can see just in June we were at 26K. A 21% drop, of course, would be a lot more substantial, and it would put Bitcoin back at around $23,000. And that might be an interesting number, because if you were to look out that year-to-date ROI of Bitcoin, which we've talked about this chart a lot as well, and you average out 2015 and 2019, and you look at it in the context of 2023, these lows here, you can see would actually be below this low, and this low here was in that 24 to 25K level. So a correction by Bitcoin of 20% from the current valuation would put Bitcoin at around 23K, which is around where this base was for the average of both 2015 and 2019.
There are a few reasons why this is happening, and both Ben and Gareth already explained them before. You should watch this video next. Also, let us know in the comments below what you think the end of August will look like, and we will come back to these later at the end of the month to see if they were right.